The two Spider-Men attack, but he easily knocks them away. No doubt they were overpowered by the sight of the Jackal's junk. The Junkle, if you will.
Can you believe it? Wimpy old Professor Warren. And look at me, able to take on not one, but two Spider-Men at the same time. I'd like to see those nitwits at ESU deny me tenure now.
Oh, good. He wasn't even tenured when he made the huge-ass lab. Actually, that's another thing we can add to the list of questions concerning this place. Where did he find time to build something this large? Jack gives him some clothes, and it's just... wow. I mentioned in the original text review that the creators somehow were inspired by The Matrix years before it came out, and that still rings true. Big black leather trench coat, black t-shirt, and said coat with the unnecessary chains hanging from it. I especially love the one on his sleeve that isn't even attached to anything. It's just dangling there like some zipper extender or something. But yeah, impressive that this is the style they went with in the mid-90s given the aesthetics at the time.
I know clone foo.
Speaking of aesthetics, he mentions how he spent 5 years in the cloning tank. So right after he died, he got put in the tank.
You know, boys, I was monitoring you the whole time I was tanked up.
You were monitoring them while you were drunk?
Well, with a little time out for CNN and the Playboy channel.
Ew, you were jerking off in there too? Is that what the pod juices were?
Quite an interesting half a decade you've had.
Considering in real time about 20 years have passed, this half a decade included the original Star Wars trilogy, several presidents, all of Star Trek The Next Generation, and the fall of the Soviet Union. I'd say yeah, it was.
But I want to hear about it all in detail. That's why I've summoned you back here.
This disco thing I've heard about, is that still going on?
You see, when last we met, I surreptitiously programmed you boys to return here when I reawakened.
I created an elaborate plot to bring you back here to act like encyclopedias to me after I mutated into a giant green man who might as well be the Joker doing stand-up considering I can't stop making terrible jokes. That makes way more sense than I was a mentally ill person who was pissed off about Gwen Stacy's death. Like... bringing back the Jackal for a follow-up to the original 70s Clone Saga makes sense. The creators were right about that. But what the hell were they thinking with this dialogue and explanation? Now don't get me wrong, the Jackal in the original story was not super serious all the time. He had a big goofy grin on his mask after all, but he wasn't spouting jokey jokes every other line. And if you read the issue where he died, the idea that he had this whole thing planned out, getting in a tank to be mutated, programming both Peter and his clone to come back to his super top secret dimensionally transcendental base in the Catskills, along with some kind of psychic connection to allow one to see the other if they're in danger, not a thing after last issue by the way, all of that is laughable. The Jackal knocked out Peter, created a quick clone of him, Spidey and the clone fought for contrived reasons, the Gwen Stacy clone called the Jackal a monster, which snapped him out of his delusions, bomb went off, he died. Why go through any of that if his idiotic plan was to get him and the clone to come back in 5 years? Why even have them come back in 5 years? This whole thing was about being pissed at Spidey for Gwen Stacy's death. Even if it wasn't enough to simply kill him, why wait an additional 5 years just so you can sit in a pod and apparently watch CNN and porn?
This is starting to sound like a bad comic book plot.
He claims that the Jackal who died in the original saga was a clone, which is... ugh. Sure, as a retcon, I get what they're trying to do, but again, it's being overly complicated for no reason. Hell, why not just have this Jackal be a clone? It builds more justification of calling the storyline The Clone Saga when a major villain in it is also a clone. You could argue he finds himself genetically superior to the original or some crap like that. But whatever, Spidey attacks him, enraged, but Ben stops him. Jackal's the only one who's got the answers we need, and until we get them, we play it his way or not at all. What answers? If you mean the visions, he just explained everything. It's dumb, but he already gave an explanation. And you could just find out more information in his computers if you really wanted to. There is no reason not to just deck him and be done with it. The Jackal examines the Guardian's body.
Look at him. A massive, misshapen, misunderstood monster. I love alliteration, don't you?
Yes, I do. It's you I hate. He rambles about how Jack and the Guardian are both failed clones of Peter Parker, which I thought they pretty much already established, and that since he couldn't infuse them with the proper balance of emotion, intellect, and memory, he just wiped their minds and reprogrammed them as protectors of this complex. Wait, if you had the ability to reprogram their minds a certain way, what the hell was the problem with their minds beforehand? Shouldn't you have this figured out?
Your appearance on the mountain, Scarlet Spider, and I must say, I agree with you, that's a pretty ludicrous name.
Why? What is so ridiculous about that? Both creators and characters in the series all hated the Scarlet Spider name. It is over 20 years later since this storyline happened, and I still don't get why it's such a problem, especially when this was the age that gave us characters named Die Hard or Overkill. He leads them to a chamber where he claims he's keeping the real Peter Parker, that both Spider-Man and the Scarlet Spider are clones. Spidey loses it again, and when Scarlet tries to intervene once more, he goes nuts and punches him too, saying he's a living lie and everything he hates, which is just hilarious because earlier he was referring to Ben as his brother. He rants about how the two are just trying to take away his happiness, especially in light of his impending fatherhood. Peter tells the Jackal to open the pod and reveal the real Peter Parker, that he's not afraid of the truth. Here's the truth, you're both idiots who are listening to someone like this instead of knocking him out. What is it about this douchebag that compels you to listen to anything he says? If he told me that the sky was blue, he'd do it in some smarmy, jokey way that would make me think that he was full of it. The Jackal says, whoops, claiming that he opened the wrong chamber. Part 2 ends with him claiming that it's actually the original, non-clone Gwen Stacy. Yeah, I sure believe it. Why, it's as consistent and solid as that smoke covering up Gwen's naughty bits. And this brings us to Adjectiveless Spider-Man number 56, my first review. And now, 10 years later, I have come back to this. You know, one of the things that has changed over the years has been my standards of awfulness. Obviously, something like US 1 is nowhere near as terrible as, say, Holy Terror or the like. But when I did those early episodes, I treated them as if they were legitimately that bad. The bottom of the proverbial barrel that has allowed it to rot in all its putridness. In reality, they may not be any great work of art, but they can be fun, or at least entertainingly bad. So, revisiting this after a decade, is this storyline really that bad? Oh god, yes! If anything, I think it's actually gotten worse for me! I don't think the bottom of the barrel is quite enough for it. Could we bury it a few more feet underground? The title of the issue is Truths and Deceptions. What truths ever happened in this? The entire issue is the Jackal spouting bullcrap after bullcrap, and the two Spider-Men standing around going, wow, really? Like a modern Venus, she emerges from the swirling mists of a high-tech capsule. More like a low-budget porno with a fog machine. What's the deal with the smoke, anyway? Spoilers, this is just another clone, so why doesn't she get pod juices or whatever? Or was the Jackal seeing if dry ice in the cloning process would result in them staying fresher for longer, like they were in really good Tupperware? Anyway, she speaks to them. Spider-Man? Peter? What's happened to me? Help me, please? Somehow I know you're Spider-Man, Peter, and this is not instantly a giveaway that I am not the real deal. Help me. Another sign might be when the Jackal says she should put on some clothes and she's not immediately, wait, what the hell's going on with the Green Goblin knockoff over there? Spidey yet again attacks him, but this time it's Gwen who stops him, apparently getting dressed very quickly. Peter, don't. It's me, Peter. I'm sorry I'm being so emotional right now, Peter. I just can't control myself. Gwen and Spidey walk off, and man, I just realized how much Peter Parker really needs a therapist. Like, I can imagine so many of his problems could be solved if he had a medical professional to talk to on a regular basis. But yeah, the Jackal encourages the two.
Maybe you can help her find a new pair of go-go boots.
A truly in-fashion thing for her to have in the 90s, since apparently the sliding timescale means that only happened a few years ago. Now it's time for Ben to grab the Jackal, and then cut over to Aunt May in the hospital. I skipped over this in the original review because it was a good sequence. Even did this weird experimental thing where you see me flipping the pages while I hold the camera. And honestly, the same holds true now. It's Aunt May thinking how she'd love to see the baby being born, but she's just so tired. Boy, it'd really suck if it turned out she was just an actress hired by Norman Osborn as part of some convoluted revenge scheme. I'm with you, Aunt May. I am very, very tired. Jack keeps poking the Jackal to try to talk about his impending clone degeneration, and the Jackal just whaps him away so he can claim that he has the truth for Ben. The Gwen clone gets all sad and upset about how Peter doesn't believe that she's the real deal, and Spidey has another breakdown as she continues to ramble. Also, apparently all these computers decided to have cameras focused on Spidey for some reason.
No, not again! Not again!
And Spidey punches a monitor.
I won't be a video game streamer! Not again!
What, you think I'm just joking?
The rest of you can play this game if you want. I can't play the Spider-Man game since I don't have a PS4.
Ben apparently has had a breakdown of his own as he sits in a fetal position while, Peter continues to vent his frustrations on the computers. Geez, Kylo Ren has less temper tantrums than Spidey has had in this storyline. The Jackal then claims this whole thing has been a mistake.
What was I thinking? Orchestrating the battle between you both? The one in which you appeared to die? I was a pathetic man, searching.
What do you mean, was pathetic?
I'm sorry I did it to you, son. You deserved better. I'm so sorry, which is why I'm grinning at you.
He says that Ben is the real one and not the clone, and that he was the one who pulled him from the smokestack to keep him from dying, even faking his death to try to save his life, and implanted fake memories, and dear lord, all this is annoying. The thing is, I'm not even against the idea of the Jackal manipulating them and screwing with their heads, but he does it so poorly, and yet these two just eat it up. Also, Spidey is still wrecking the computers for some reason. Also, Kane is nearby watching this. And Scryer is watching him. And you are all watching me, watching Scryer, watching Kane, watching the Jackal and Ben Reilly, and every person along this chain is thinking, man, I could be watching something else right now. While the Jackal tries to get Ben to kill Peter to take his life back, what does that even mean? Does he really think he's gonna waltz up to Mary Jane and say, oh hey MJ, I'm the real Peter, we're married now? But then Jack interrupts, wanting once again to learn more about the degeneration thing. Why is he even asking when he was established as having known about it already? And the Jackal knocks him away, before just attacking Ben for no reason.
Why make me have to get all violent? I told you I hate violence. I could just kill you for making me do this.
Oh man, guys, how can we tell if the Jackal is lying or not? He seems like such a stable and honest person. After Jack disturbingly leaps onto Ben's head, the Jackal reveals that he put in mental implants that prevent Ben from fighting back. Which also proves to be a lie later, since we see Ben kicking him. But of course, such implants are not present in Spidey, who has apparently finished tearing up computers and punches the Jackal again. And now he says Peter's the real one and Ben's the clone.
Everything else is just smoke and mirrors.
The term smoke and mirrors means to make you think something is true with misleading details or information. Except this storyline is not like that. It's just the Jackal saying, no, seriously, I'm totally telling the truth this time, and everyone believing it. It's less smoke and mirrors and more a fogged up piece of glass with the words, or is it, written on it. Why lie? Why tell me I was the real one just now?
For fun? I've got to learn to program a sense of humor to the next batch.
The Jackal. Basically just a dude saying, it was just a prank, bro. Peter brings up a continuity point. During a storyline called The Evolutionary War, a villain known as the High Evolutionary retconned the original Clone Saga, saying that the Jackal never created clones, just some virus that made people think and look differently. From what I've read, this was done because, at the time, most science concluded that cloning wasn't possible. And somewhere, Dolly the sheep is rolling her eyes. which is kind of a dumb thing to be worried about in a comic that has people flying or being bitten by radioactive spiders that grant them superpowers. So, what's the explanation that the Jackal offers for this continuity point? Oh, the High Evolutionary was just lying. Seems to be a pretty popular pastime around here, I've noticed. And somehow the Jackal gets Peter to stop manhandling him by just saying, "No, you're the real one. Go make out with Gwen Stacy."
Come on, Peter. You know you want to. Kiss the girl. That'll prove it to you.
Carl the Llama is a more convincing liar than the Jackal.
I do not kill people. That is my least favorite thing to do.
Peter exclaims that it doesn't matter even if she was the real Gwen, since he has a life and family and all that now. And then Gwen melts, revealing that she was indeed a clone. She was fresh out of the friggin' pod. I guess it's not like Tupperware, unless the Jackal left it open during those 5 years.
Oh boy, I love when that happens. Timing is everything.
It's so funny watching a representation of the woman I loved melting away. Say, what was my motivation for becoming a villain again? Spidey once again grabs him. Why bother? You're just gonna let him go again.
Why? Why keep doing this to us? Why, you ask? Smoke and mirrors, smoke and mirrors. When will the truth be told?
So, like I said at the beginning of this review, the Clone Saga was something I knew about as a kid, even before I started reading comics. And I was intrigued as all hell about this storyline. Not just the saga, but Smoke and Mirrors itself. Because as a kid, I collected Spider-Man trading cards. I've talked about this before, but a series of those cards focused around Spider-Man storylines in the comics, with Smoke and Mirrors being represented by this image of the Jackal, gigantic in size, holding Spider-Man and the Scarlet Spider in his hands. Not just that he was this towering, imposing, frightening kaiju of a threat, but symbolically that he played these two characters like they were pieces on a chessboard, mere pawns to his grand designs. And that title, Smoke and Mirrors, evoking a sense of wonder and mystery, of deception and half-truths, obscure details, and of course, the symbolism of a mirror on its own, since Peter and Ben are reflections of one another. That card, on its own, sold me on the Clone Saga, and indeed, as a saga of such epic scope and power that made me want to know more about it. I think back to the innocence of my youth, before I ever even considered starting the show, and just kind of smack my forehead, because the actual storyline features the Jackal, some grinning green dumbass in a leather coat, repeating the title of the storyline as if it means anything, while acting like he's equal part Deadpool and the Joker, when in reality, he's equal part Turtle from Battlefield Earth and Harvest from The Culling. He says that he'll super-duper really tell the truth this time, that neither of them is the real Peter Parker. Dudes, if you believe that, let me tell you about my uncle who works for Nintendo. Oh, and then he just slips into a mirror. Oh yeah, another piece of technology the biology professor has, friggin' mirror teleporters. Because I guess he needed to go see the Southern Oracle to save Fantasia now. Or maybe the Jackal was Skeletor this whole time. The two are unable to break the magic mirror to get at the Jackal, who informs them that the place is going to self-destruct in a few minutes. Because the only thing that would make this ridiculously expensive, super-secret, high-tech lair complete is if he installed a self-destruct in it to ensure that he wasted all that money. Although, let's not be too hasty. Maybe this place is blowing up because of all the damage Spidey did. Jack, suddenly getting somber out of nowhere because of the clone degeneration, tells the two to make their way back to the entrance they came in, which the two of them should be able to force open if they work together. And then the Jackal grabs Jack and pulls him into the mirror, wanting to keep him for some reason. So as it turns out, Spider-Man assistant editor Glenn Greenwald absolutely loved Jack. To quote him from Life of Riley, which is basically the definitive retrospective on the Clone Saga, he was witty, he had a lot of energy and spirit, and he brought a certain lightness to an otherwise very serious storyline. I'd love to know what serious storyline he brought lightness to, because nothing about this has been serious. It has all been one big joke. Between the constant lying, the bad humor, and the frankly laughable attempts at pathos, how could anyone take this garbage seriously? In any event, Spidey and Ben discuss the degeneration, thinking that together they might be able to figure out a way to stop it. Maybe, but then we'd have to know for sure which one of us is the clone. If not both of us. Do you though? I mean, you kinda have to operate under the assumption that one or both of you is a clone, so keep studying both of you until you find the answer, then work on why the degeneration occurs and how you can prevent it. Ben says it's easier to just go on believing what they did before, that he is the clone and Peter the original. Meaning that this was 3 issues where nothing mattered. Good job!
But if we believe that he lied about everything, how can we ever believe in anything about ourselves again?
What the funkin' wagnall is that supposed to mean? If he lied about everything, we can't believe ourselves. Those 2 statements do not connect. The dude just kept spewing bullcrap and said nothing that would alter the facts you have. It'd be different if Spidey had said, but if he wasn't lying about everything. But he did not. If he's lying, then you can continue to believe things about yourselves. Whatever, we have another inception of people watching, as now Jackal and Jack are watching the 2 Spider-Men leave, with Kane watching them, and Scryer watching Kane. And considering the ultimate revelation about Norman Osborn being behind the Clone Saga, he's probably 20 feet away watching too. And so our comic ends back in the Jackal's lab, revealing a lone surviving clone pod. When the Jackal left, he claimed the real Peter Parker was totally in the lab if they looked for him. So, was he? Of course he wasn't! This comic sucks! It sucked 10 years ago, it sucked 20 years ago, and it'll continue to suck for the next 100! The artwork is serviceable, but the story is absolutely rotten. The only important things put forth in the story are that the Jackal is alive and that clone degeneration is a thing. Old characters are reintroduced poorly, new characters are introduced even worse, and basically it all just ends up being a colossal waste of time struggling under its own weight. Even with the clone degeneration thing, which isn't actually a thing regarding Ben, so it's rather pointless, we ultimately learn nothing. I, on the other hand, have learned quite a lot over the last 10 years. I've learned the difference between rugby and football. I learned liquids in the vacuum of space would likely boil instead of freeze. I learned that I am the failure of our educational system and am indeed the world's greatest scammer. I learned that if you make a list of your favorite Night Gallery episodes and the caterpillar isn't on there, it somehow invalidates the rest of the list. I've learned not to make jokes about Schrodinger's cat. I've learned that decorative feathers and fur on spears can serve as a useful addition to said spear. I learned who the character of Angelo was and why it was stupid when he was murdered. I've learned not to get too attached to any particular video platform. I've learned that people will always want to know when the next History of Power Rangers is coming out. But most especially, I've learned that I will never be as popular as the Bee Gees. Although I do inexplicably have more Twitter followers than them. I've also learned that this is the best job in the world. It's had its ups and downs, and I've struggled with a lot of stuff. But I remain dedicated to this and to providing entertainment for all of you, my friends. And hopefully, I will not only see you all again next week here on Atop the Fourth Wall where bad comics burn, but for many years to come as well. Happy 10th anniversary. Hello again.
You did this to me, didn't you? You made me this abomination!
I didn't do anything. I thought you were still dead.
How? How did this happen?
Linksano thinks that the energy field on Europa, the one that repaired dead or damaged tissue, restored you using the remaining organic bits in your body, mixed with some of my own that was left there, blood and hair and whatnot. Somehow your mind was carried along for the ride.
This is your fault! I was ready to leave this accursed universe, but you had to interfere! You've always been the thing that holds me back!
Let her go, Mechakara!
Stop calling me that! That is not my name! You are not worthy to speak my name! All organics should be prostrating themselves before me! You should be begging me for your life! Instead, I will slaughter you and everything you care about! Ah! You made me like you! You made me like you! You will suffer for this! Your pain won't end! Ah! I remember you now. I know what you did. Ah! Ah! You. I should. Ah! Can't. Too much pain. With any luck, they'll kill each other. Let him die. Let them all die. Corrupted by flesh or perfected in steel. I always survive.
Are you okay?
I've been better. Nimue, I need you to start scanning for Mechakara's life signs. They should be a close match to my own. Nimue?
I don't think she could hear you.
But that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and this won't either. I'm sorry.
What?
Good work, Saris. The communications block is working. Stay in this frequency to keep in touch.
Look, are you sure you want to do this?
No, I don't. We have no choice. Let him know we're ready.
Okay.
Aaron? What hit me?
I did. I'm sorry. I didn't want to do this.
What the hell was going on? Why did you knock me out after I was already knocked out?
He asked me to do this. I couldn't say no. Not after all he did for me.
Who? Who are you talking about?
Yes, who? Who could possibly hate you as much as Mechakara? Who would ensure that that robot would find his way back to Earth? Who would want you to look into a mirror, as if through a glass darkly, and see what you really are reflected back at you? You told me when we last met that you didn't end up like me. Well, we both know that's a lie, don't we? Mirror.